All right, I believe we're in. Well, I want to say good morning to everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar this morning. Um, the focus today is on hotel procurement, and I can't think of a better time, more timely session than now when we're looking at what's going on in kind of the global economy as it is focused in on tariffs. I've done a slew of webinars before, moderators slew of webinars, and this is the most timely, I think, conversation I think I'll ever have. It just so seems to fall now. So the topic of our webinar today is nimble moves: how hotel procurement adapts to the policies of change. My name is David Eisen. I'm the editor-in-chief of Hotels Magazine. I might have a illustrious panel with me today. Then they're all going to introduce themselves in a moment. I first wanted to thank our partner and sponsor on this webinar, Integra. Integra is the world's largest food GPO with $42 billion in purchasing power. We couldn't have put this webinar together without them. I am going to play a brief, very brief video, then we are going to get into our session. So please enjoy this video. And we are back. I hope everyone can still hear me. Okay, so we're going to get into some fabulous discussion focused on hotel purchasing and procurement, and really with that backdrop being on tariffs. What I'd first like to do is everyone is going to just go real quick and introduce themselves. I said I give them 30 seconds to do it. So we're going to start because Debbie is right in front of me. Debbie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone?
Hi, I'm Debbie Young, and I'm the Vice President of Sourcing, Contracting, and Procurement for Loews Hotels. I oversee all of those areas. I've been with Loews Hotels for a very long period of time, and before that, the Sheridan Corporation.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
Jeffrey, you're next on the list.
Thank you, David. So good morning, everyone, and happy Wednesday. I'm Jeffrey Simmons, and I'm the Vice President of Supply Management for Sodexo, supporting Integra and its amazing customers. I have 32 years of procurement sourcing experience, with 22 years of that being in hotel procurement and sourcing, including 9 years on property with Red Lion, and then also leading sourcing for the Americas for Hilton, Wyndham, and Avendra on the room side. And I'm approaching my 1 year anniversary in my current role supporting Integra. Thanks, David.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Last but not least, Jason, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Jason Reeder, Chief Operating Officer of Remington Hospitality. We currently operate 137 hotels, both in the U.S. and 5 countries outside of the U.S. And so it's very nice to meet everyone.
Great. So just a little bit of housekeeping. We do have if you want to submit a question, we're going to get into a little Q&A toward the tail end of our discussion. You can pop that into the chat box out there. So please send us any questions that might be on your mind if we don't get to the ones that we're going to ask. So obviously not going to bury the lead. Everyone I say is talking about the tariffs, not just and we're going to be specific on hotel procurement as we know, because you guys are the specialists here. We're not even talking about how it's kind of had this impact on just travel in general, which is your business. But when we talk about tariffs, what we saw with, I guess, 104% tariffs on China going into effect at midnight, I guess, last night. They're retaliating with 84% of their own. And then obviously we have the 10%, the tariffs on basically every country out there, trying to get to this point where everyone is, I guess, at some point, we're just going to be buying U.S. goods if, President Trump has his way, I suppose. So, you guys get a lot of the goods that make your hotels run, right? Whether it's food, whether it's, FF&E, OS&E, everything that makes a hotel run. You don't just buy it in the U.S., you get it from overseas in these countries that are being hit with these tariffs. So it's the most topical thing going on right now, and certainly in hospitality. I guess first question is, are you guys worried? What's it look like? Jason, why don't we start with you?
Worry is probably, I tend not to worry just because I don't think it really has any benefit, but we are certainly having contingency planning going on for purchasing. Obviously the hope is that this is just a very short-lived tumultuous time and things settle down in a short period of time. But, I think what's smart is you plan for the worst and hope for the best. So we certainly have been looking at contingency planning from a purchasing standpoint. But yeah, it's concerning to your point. It's been a very, I'd say for the last few weeks, it's just been a pretty good roller coaster. So we're buckling in and doing the best we can, but there's certainly concern out there.
Let me just ask you, I'll stick with you real quick. I mean, how many hotels within the Remington portfolio, say?
137 hotels.
What are your, I mean, just really quick, anecdotally, what are your owners saying? Are they worried?
Yeah, it depends on the owner. Some are more worried than others, but for the most part, it's more of, hey, what are you guys doing and how does this look? And,
Yeah.
right now it's early enough in, I think, to where it hasn't reached the level of where, the phone's ringing off the hook. I've had a few owners that have called and asked, what's going on and how we're doing. But for the most part, I think this is still relatively new in terms of, the impact. So I think, the longer it goes, the more concern that would come out of it.
Debbie, I'll toss it over to you because Lowe's, obviously you operate full service, luxury type assets. I guess I won't position it as are you worried because there's obviously a little bit of everyone's a little bit unnerved probably by it. But kind of what are you seeing as kind of initially the challenges that you're going to have to be dealing with as it relates vis-a-vis hotel purchasing?
Right, yes, so some of the challenges certainly are rising cost because of the tariffs. We're looking at, renegotiating contracts possibly. We hopefully have a diversified supplier pool of suppliers, but, we're still looking to consistently diversify our suppliers. So, we're looking at renegotiating contracts if we can, looking to work with our suppliers that we have partners with to see if, they can help take on some of the additional cost as well as we do. So we're partnering with the suppliers. We're looking for other suppliers. Even if we, can move our products to other places, other countries, we don't know. The tariffs are so volatile. Tomorrow it might be a larger tariff. So it's very difficult. I think it's being strategic, looking at everything, trying to figure out your supplier base, where your products are coming from, and where your largest spend is, and try to work from there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And then Jeff, obviously, you're coming in from a little different because you don't work for you used to work for hotel companies, but now you're working for a food service management kind of company. What is your take on all this? And kind of, how are you counseling your partners? What are you kind of, what is your kind of general feeling right now?
So yeah, obviously there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of insecurity, and there's a sense really from everyone that nothing is within your control. The comprehensive nature of these tariffs is pretty overwhelming. The idea of escalating costs, a slumping market, trade wars, enough to keep everyone up at night. But I think the best strategy in the early days, sort of what Jason said, is take a deep breath, right? It's very early. We don't know the full scope of what the impact is going to be. So, take that breath, and staying comfortable in an uncomfortable environment, I think, is a valuable skill set. I say there are some things you can do to help manage and kind of pull back some of that control. One is the AHLA is an advocacy organization. Go to them and tell them what's going on in your business. What don't you like about the tariffs? Which there's a lot not to like about them. Let them advocate on your behalf. I think that's really important to make your voice heard. I think the second step, and some of what Debbie had said, is really understand your business. This is a great opportunity, if you haven't already, to understand your business, where your products are coming from, what countries, become more intimate in how you purchase at the hotel level and what other options are available to you. But certainly there's going to be an impact to the hotel business due to the high level of imported goods. But the true cost is not known right now. But we know that FF&E, much of it is produced in Asia. We know that textiles, much of it is produced in Asia as well. Amenities, there's a large manufacturing base here in the States, but there's still componentry such as pumps for large format that all come from China. I think what that's going to do is force companies to produce in Mexico or even in the United States on some of those things. And then food products, we know either Mexico or Canada, big impact there. But I think the impact depends on the category of spend and the countries where the products are coming from. In other cases, just from my perspective, I think I've received 4 letters so far from suppliers that say, hey, there's going to be a price increase, or hey, we're thinking about it. I think to a large extent, suppliers are still reviewing their options. They're still building their financial models. They're starting to communicate their thoughts in order to provide them the flexibility, sort of like not completely in parallel, but like COVID, right? When they knew this was coming. And then presenting letters of notice, just, that flexibility to adjust pricing when they need to. But overall, I mean, your question earlier about, am I concerned? I'm cautiously optimistic at this point for a number of reasons. I think the first is you could see in the next 2 to 4 weeks significant action on these tariffs either being reduced or eliminated. There's a lot of countries who've come to the table saying, hey, hold on a second, I want to renegotiate and let's see what we can do. So I think that movement is positive. I think second, it creates the environment to find alternative sources of supply. Granted, you cannot find them overnight. It's going to take some time, but at least engaging in that process helps you understand your business a little more. And I think in the end, cooler heads will prevail, except for one situation, which I would caution. And I think I'm right in this. I hope I'm not, but the Chinese situation is pretty much untenable right now. It is, as we've seen, the escalation at midnight this morning, and then the Chinese response. China is, for me, pretty much a non-starter in terms of finding product. I know we're tied to them, but a lot of companies. I was just talking to an FF&E manufacturer this morning, who in 2017 started to move their product out of China into Indonesia. Granted, Indonesia has a 10% tariff, but they recognize that, and I think a lot of other manufacturers are going to recognize that they need to find other places to produce.
Well, I'll tell you what else about China. They make 80% of the video games sold here. So that might be the toughest thing, right?
So you're saying our productivity may go up, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
right?
that's true. Yeah, that might be a good thing.
Yeah.
Maybe more people enter the hospitality workforce because they're not going to sit at home and play video games anymore. But you make some great points about, and there's a couple things that I wanted to hit on that you were talking about, and I'll ask of Debbie and Jason. I mean, I imagine even when in normal times, call it, right, you're always kind of vetting your suppliers and auditing and looking at ways to save money, right? So I guess maybe it's something like this. It's almost, I mean, I'm not going to put COVID there, but it's almost like you kind of have to, when that happened, there was kind of this recalibration of everything and really looking at, I mean, you guys are running, looking at things like zero-based audit balancing and kind of, anyway, I can't remember the term, but I mean, you're really kind of looking at your business, right? It really forces you to kind of look and, look under the covers and see where the savings are. Are you guys do you find yourself doing that more now that you're kind of being forced to do it, or is it something that's always been habit? Jason or Debbie, please.
I think you always do it, but obviously when something like this arises, it becomes more prevalent and you spend more time on it. I mean, some of the things that you had just mentioned about, you're absolutely right. Like, we've got a couple of hotels under construction, and whereas we were getting some stuff from China, now they're looking at alternative sources of where you can get it that's less. You get more creative. You're more motivated, frankly, to find alternative solutions, just because the cost basis is prohibitive. So I think you're always kind of looking at it, but when things like this come up, you just become that much more dedicated to finding an alternative solution. And knock on wood, so far so good. For the most part, we've been able to find solutions. So, obviously the longer this drags out, the more it could be. But I'm in the same camp, Jeffrey, what you just said. I think the China situation, it could go on for a while. It could all of a sudden resolve itself. Who knows? But I feel pretty good about everything else in terms of probably resolving itself in the more of the short term than long term.
You guys are both kind of, you and Jeffrey at least are pretty optimistic. I mean, for the most part. Debbie, I don't know if I am so much, but I don't run hotels either, so I guess that's maybe easier for me to say. But Debbie, go ahead.
I'm pretty optimistic as well.
3 optimistics.
As we move products around from country to country, I think the longer this goes on, it's going to become more difficult, because the other countries that are receiving the orders and the supply and the demand are going to become overcapacitated, I think, as well. So I think that could be a struggle eventually. And I think just the fact that we don't know day to day what is going to happen, making decisions, also includes others within our company, right? So procurement can't just make all the decisions. We have to, go out, do our due diligence, negotiate vendor contracts the best we can, look for alternative products, negotiate tariffs with our current suppliers, optimize or consolidate our products so that we have more volume to negotiate pricing to lower our costs to help in that way, diversify our suppliers. But the end result is we have to come back and we have to, sit with our finance teams, our rooms divisions, our food and beverage teams, even engineering teams to make sure that we have a plan locally to help mitigate these costs.
Yeah. But yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
David, if I can, let me make
Sure.
one more point that I hope is a good point, which is, so when we look at the tariffs and you look at the percentage, that doesn't always necessarily mean that percentage is just moved on to the cost, right? Some suppliers, maybe at the 10% range, they might make a calculation that it's better to absorb most of that tariff, so call it a 10%, and they only pass on 2% because they want, number one, to have a strong relationship. Number two, they want the security of supply going forward. Number three, through that strong relationship, that loyalty that you're going to give back to them because they were there for you. So that's why, again, to kind of just take a deep breath, is that just because something's 10% doesn't mean that's what you're going to end up receiving. One of the letters that I received in an area that was above 10% wasn't equivalent to what the tariff actually was. So I think that's an important point to understand, that there could be a lesser impact in cost than what one might think just looking at percentages.
Jeff, you're sounding like Scott Bessent and Peter Navarro. You're taking the.
Oh, I have not watched them, but okay.
They're on the news. But yeah, the idea behind just the tariffs and specifically, it's like, we're going to reshore all manufacturing in the US. We're going to everyone's going to then buy just US kind of made product, which doesn't seem like a real kind of reality, especially within the next 1-2 years. It takes time to do something like that. But are you looking in general, like, do you guys have specific strategies you had to put in place? Like anything like really specific? I know we're talking in generalities a little here. Anything specific, Jason or Debbie, you actually kind of put in place now? Are you looking to buy, like, let's say there was something you were buying in Vietnam, or it came from Vietnam, came from wherever it was, that now you're going to buy it from that's made in the US and you can buy it from there. Are there specific instances like that where you're going to be buying more US product going forward?
So the one specific example I can give you is we have a hotel that's being developed in Miami. It's currently under construction. And so one specific thing is originally a lot of those case goods were going to come from China. We are now looking to buy it from a domestic manufacturer in the US, just because when you account for what the tariffs are now, of course, any savings you had are not only wiped away, but it would be more costly to import it. So that's one specific. The other thing we do, which we've done this in the past, and Debbie, I'm guessing your company does this as well, is we've really been more cautious about, as we're watching prices rise, and this isn't just tariffs, this was when we were dealing with inflation, is really looking at menus and pricing and making sure, we're very, very like quarterly, we're reviewing menu pricing and making sure, and again, it's the same thing, we don't always just pass on any price increase we get, but you have to watch your costs, right? Make sure you're just being specific and strategic in some of your pricing decisions. So those are two things that we've done.
Debbie, anything you guys have done?
Very similar, yes.
Yeah, it's are you seeing it more like in big things like case goods and like what building materials? But what about stuff that like toilet paper, stuff like that? The quantity and day-to-day stuff that customers that they need that you use, the linens, that kind of stuff. Are those pretty much, maybe they were already US?
Well, some are US based, right? And some are imported. So it's difficult, where we can buy in the US, we're trying to find suppliers who can
Yeah.
who can, quite frankly, fill the quantities of product that we need and get them to us. I just think that, well, that is a great plan, right, to buy in the US, but it's going to take time in order for these companies to build their manufacturing plants, get the products in, get up to
Mhm.
speed, as well as the companies that are currently here ramp up and be able to produce the goods that we need when we need it.
Yeah.
And bear in mind that many of these US companies also rely on the import companies, the other countries for their product that they are making the goods with. So it's tricky.
I think
How
one thing
about,
that you could see come out of this, though, and I've seen it in a couple of instances where you had, there's obviously this presents opportunity, right? So if you're a business owner in the US and let's say you're producing a certain amount, you're going, wait a minute, I can, in some cases, of course, it takes time. I would say it happens overnight, but some businesses already have an infrastructure, or maybe they're only at 50% capacity. They're going, wait a minute, I see an opportunity here and I'm going to increase it. So we've seen a couple companies already that before they have reached out to us and said where they can only hit a certain level, they're like, we've doubled our capacity. We are increasing it so we can meet some of that demand. There will be a lag time, of course. It doesn't happen overnight. But I do think what you'll find and what we haven't seen yet, because again, this is also new, is you'll see companies come in and meet the demands and opportunities that they didn't before because they see the opportunity. There's entrepreneurs out there right now, I promise you, in a lot of different segments that are going, wait a minute, what strategically should we be doing differently to meet that demand?
yeah. What about just looking at it from the standpoint of or the looking at it from that tariffs, it's kind of going to keep looking at causing impacting inflation, right? And things were already expensive. I mean, Jeff, you could probably talk about the great egg debate. Avocados from Mexico, which everyone loves in their breakfast burritos, are going to get more expensive. Is the worry not the worry, but the great thing about operating hotels is an inflation hedge, right? Because you can set your rates on a daily basis. We talked a little bit about this, Jason, about menu prices, just room rates. I mean, are we going to see this? Are we going to see these costs that are going to be coming into the system passed on to the consumer? Because that's typically what happens, right?
Yeah, I think, depending on how long it goes, certainly I think that could happen. I think part of it too is though it's just so early. I mean, we have to remain competitive, of course. You can't just, to your point earlier about companies and not passing on every percentage because they want to remain loyal. We have to do the same thing. If you're just gouging your customer, you're going to lose business, so it's not going to work. But
Right.
yes, when you think about inflation and things, yeah, you will have to adjust pricing at times. Sometimes you'll be able to absorb some depending on what it is and how long it is and how long it lasts. It's just I think a lot of this is you have to just take a deep breath, go day by day. I mean, on the optimistic side, this could turn out actually in a good favor. We did have some trade policies that were unfair, meaning our stuff is getting tariffed more than what was coming in. So, if some of these countries it becomes a more fair, even playing field, that's also good for U.S. manufacturing because then those goods will be sold more someplace else. So I think there is a point here where we could see this actually become a good thing long term. It's very turbulent right now.
Debbie, is the eggs Benedict going to get more expensive at the Regency? What can we expect there?
Well, I hope not, but it could. Again, I think that goes back to as well looking at the menus, as Jason mentioned, and you know, um, really paying attention, recipe building to ensure that you're pricing your menus right, or looking at the portions on the plate to help reduce the cost. Or not offering something and subbing something in where the cost is extremely high. So as far as food and beverage goes, I think
Yeah.
there are things the hotels can do to help.
Well, you were talking about SKUs, and of course, I had to ask you what a SKU was back in our prep call. But looking at different items, like looking at bacon, and maybe I'm not buying the I don't know, the Hormel bacon. I'm getting maybe Hormel's the cheapest. I don't know, but getting the different brand of bacon, the different eggs. Maybe I don't know, going
Yep.
from. I hope you don't go from organic to the regular stuff. I don't know these things. You know how it is. But are
Yeah.
you looking at like within a category and saying we might have to shift to something different to something
We
like
do
that?
We do that all the time, just on a regular basis. You know, we try to consolidate our SKUs and we look at the brands that we're buying, and we look at, of course, the quality. We want to ensure that the quality is there. And we, you know, see how we can negotiate with the volumes of product. I think that's really important. If you have, you know, 50 SKUs of bacon out there and everyone's using a different bacon, that is not helping you at all. First of all, on consistency, quality, and then pricing. So it's really important to try to consolidate your products as much as you can.
Yeah. Well, how does that work for you, Jason, when I mean, you guys operate over 100 hotels. It makes it kind of when you have scale, which I imagine helps with purchasing, but it's a lot of
It
hotels.
does. No, so
of
we,
bacon.
we have, we have an above property food and beverage team, and we'll kind of like what Debbie was saying, we'll look at and say, they'll give direction on, bacon. We'll stick with the bacon line. These are highly leveraged bacon items where you get the best rebates, the best pricing, and the quality is the most consistent. This is where you should go. So we have some standards that we put out across the hotels to try to remain some consistency. Obviously, depending on where the hotel is located, because we do have some stuff international, sometimes those things have to change because you can't always get the exact same product everywhere. But yeah, we're consistently looking at, just like what Debbie was saying, highly leveraged items, best price, quality, and how we can maximize that efficiencies. And the other thing I just want to add is it's not all price, and it's kind of what Debbie said as well, is it's portion control, it's what's included with the item. Maybe you consolidate the menu where you don't offer quite as many things, but it's still good enough. There's ways you can control your costs without automatically passing the cost on to someone else.
I apologize to all the vegetarians watching this morning too. So doesn't have to be all. Jeff, but you're the food guy. You know about this stuff. What are we looking at when it comes to F&B?
Well,
Now we can't. We have to. I mean, we can't get. I guess Canadian whiskey. Would it be? We have to drink.
Yeah, I think one thing I would say is be really deliberate about the decisions you make, right? Because if it pans out that some of what we're saying is accurate, that, perhaps in 60 days, some of these tariffs are gone and you've made a decision to move in a different direction, it's going to be really difficult to kind of shift back. And then just the upheaval that causes from going one to another. So I think I would say focus on, to what Debbie and Jason said, is sort of that participation in those brand specified programs to the extent that you're a brand. And because the higher the participation level, the easier it is to go back to a supplier, renegotiate pricing, because your volume has escalated. And I think sometimes that gets lost, but I think that's very important. I would also say your operations, just like we discussed, understanding your products and your purchasing habits, but your operations, how you're running your business. To me, it's something I do with my team, is always look at what we're doing, how we're doing it. Are we doing it the most efficient, the most streamlined possible? It never hurts to go back through that process, whether you're managing a buffet or how you serve in your outlets or in your banquets or whatever that is, because we all know that those can be areas of high waste potentially. So I think don't overlook the operational aspect of, and maybe it makes sense to put a champion at the property or a little committee together of champions that are really out there advocating and being accountable for helping your operation run as efficiently as possible.
You brought a good point about the brands. Jason, you work with a slew of different brands. What have you heard from them? Has there been any kind of emails flying around, for whether it's Hilton, Marriott, IHG, whoever you work with, saying, okay, we know that we got to hunker down a little bit. It's going to be some, difficult operations, some mines we have to kind of dodge. What are you hearing from the brands, if anything?
Yeah, so far it's a kind of a, hey, we're paying attention. Let's see where this goes. Kind of a, nothing specific yet, because I think it's too early. But hey, we recognize it's out there, and we'll be communicating with you as we learn more. That's the basic message so far.
Yeah, I mean, Debbie, you are a brand, so I guess it's like,
I'm a brand, yes.
whatever day goes.
David, if I can, I would also say, just a plug for Integra and just the whole idea of a GPO, right? I don't know if everyone on the call is part of one, but a GPO is essentially an entire procurement sourcing organization behind you, doing the work for you, advocating on your behalf. So someone like Integra with $42 billion of food spend is going to have the ability to get you fantastic deals, negotiate with suppliers, hold off some of those price increases. It proved itself to be incredibly valuable during the COVID crisis. I believe it will also prove itself to be incredibly valuable here.
Yeah.
And I think that alignment, and because not everyone has the resources or the internal mechanism to do all that procurement. Some of you're making breakfast, you're checking in guests, rooms are getting clean. Like you're attending to your customers and the operations, not focusing on procurement. So I think that's an important aspect for just the participants on the call, just to think through. If they already are, then maybe they already understand what the value is.
Such a great point. Power in numbers. You can't really, do it all on your own as much as people try. I see some people raising their hands, but I can't call on them because I don't think it allows it. So please, if you have a question, pop it into the chat box, and I can ask that of the panelists as we go. We've gone 30 minutes now. We've talked basically all about tariffs. Is there anything else we need to know about tariffs?
I think we're learning more every day. I don't know. Take it as it comes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Debbie's so fed up of tariffs. She just left.
She's like, I'm out of here.
No, each day is different. It's dynamic. New countries coming to the table, new tariffs getting slapped on. It is, whatever your political affiliation is, it is a mind-bending, fast-paced environment where I think more people are paying attention than perhaps they were before, because so much changes so fast.
Yep.
And we all hope, it seems that all the three of us are cautiously optimistic that we'll see some movement, whether it's from the EU or India or different countries that want to, find some compromise. Again, China's a whole different story that might even be a whole separate webinar in and of itself.
Yeah, exactly. You could have a whole webinar just focused on China. Oh, Debbie's back. Good.
Well, apologize. Our electricity went out here in the office. So I'm on my computer that has a battery.
Wow, that is perfect. I appreciate the sticking on. That's good of you. All right, so we've gone, like I said, 30 minutes on tariffs. I'll ask, we would have had this discussion regardless if there was tariffs out there. But so I'd love to know, how is hotel procurement? How has technology, call it even, artificial intelligence? We talked a little bit about this on our pre-call. how are you guys leveraging new technology that's out there to kind of streamline purchasing? Historically, I guess the hotel industry has been kind of slower to adapt to new technology. That's just been kind of the way it's been. Are you guys using new technology? Are you delving into AI to kind of solve some of the maybe pain points you had in purchasing? Debbie, you can take it.
Sure. Well, as far as technology goes, we have a procurement system itself. So that helps with what we're purchasing, quantities that we purchase, who our vendors are, who our suppliers are, supplier scorecards, all of those types of things, as well as looking at tariffs. We can plug in numbers and take a look at how we're, where our products are coming from, and what percentages, those types of things. Is that what you mean by that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
I do. And you guys anything, Jason, you guys are working on, or?
Yeah, we have a GPO. It's kind of what Jeff was saying earlier. So that helps with a lot. We do, when you think about new technologies, we're always looking at different ways. We're testing, all different kinds of technologies consistently, just to kind of see, what works, what doesn't. We tend to just test it more of a beta test environment first, just to make sure if it actually works or not before we do a whole rollout. But we're always looking at, I don't know if this is necessarily technology, but, looking at items that are selling the most. One of the areas we really focused on is our corner pantry, which is like a grab and go. And you're looking at items that, particularly if you have a hotel location that there's not a restaurant or something nearby, you look at, there's different solutions out there today where you can have freshly made food put in your, refrigerated units that's not necessarily made by the hotel staff. So there's a lot of different things you can kind of get creative with to try to meet the demand and also improve profitability.
Yeah. Jeffrey, anything
Mobile
there on the-
check-ins and stuff like
Double
that, right?
check-in, yeah.
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 Yep.
Yeah, I mean, David, I would say that certainly AI is being heavily leveraged in the back of the house, processing invoices, running data, revenue management, things like that. I would say that continues to be a burgeoning area of growth in terms of how sophisticated that can get. Can be pretty overwhelming if you're not used to it. But you can also sort of front of the house, as Jason and Debbie said, is take that information as it could, because in the past, hospitality has not been great at having real-time data all the time.
Right.
Now you have literally the opportunity to have real-time data in front of you and be able to make a decision quick versus have it in a week or 2 weeks, and then your lag time on decisions for your business are delayed. So I think that's one really important piece. And I would say on the technology side, robotics is really cool. I mean, I'm sure if you're out there on the internet, you've seen the robots that can do kung fu and jump in circles and all that. I mean, now they could be clearing tables in one of your outlets. They could be delivering room service. They could be, you could do sort of a commercial size Roomba that vacuums one of your large ballrooms. So there's lots of things. And I think it's important to say that this technology isn't necessarily to take away your labor. It's to supplement what you already have in order so that the folks, the human faces, the smiles, the handshakes are able there to serve your customers in a way that's really important.
Just picking up on, we talked a little about data and metrics. Also, you guys aren't siloed, right? How do you work with other, your colleagues, other departments? How does that kind of work on the purchasing side? Do you guys come into contact with that in making decisions on a day-to-day, monthly basis?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, it's not, I mean, as an organization, obviously we have, people who are specific jobs or to do certain things, but we also do, as an example, we do a monthly review of our purchasing and, what we bought the most items, what the prices are, where there's opportunities. And when we do those meetings, we have everyone in the room that's involved with different kinds of purchasing to make sure that we're aligned.
Yeah. The other question I wanted to ask, we talked a little bit about this, was just looking at, obviously logistics matters. That's a huge component, knowing where your stuff is. And Debbie, we talked about this on the pre-call, that I was alluding to the whole Domino's pizza tracker, where you could see when your pizza's made and where it is, and when it gets into the car, when it's, where it is. It's like, but you're telling me like that's still a difficult that's a challenge in the hotel industry, is knowing where your stuff is and where it is at each point. Is that getting better, easier?
I mean, it is difficult. It is getting, I think it has improved somewhat from the logistic companies. You can now go online and take a look to see where your products are, when it's coming, when it's shipping. Not all of them, but some. But I do think that is something that really needs to come into play for hospitality, so we can see that in real time.
So David, if I can, I would say that, and mainly this is with distributors, and the whole idea of the Domino's pizza tracker is awesome. And I think distributors, from my conversations, they know that they need to have it, but they don't. And they're all working on it feverishly to try to figure it out. It's really challenging. It was kind of shocking to me the last 3.5 years how a large distributor didn't know, to your point about freight, where the container was. Like, okay, when did it leave China? I'm not quite sure. Well, where is it on the water? I don't know. When's it going to hit port? Well, sometime between the 7th and the 14th. Like, what are you talking about? And it was very frustrating. And we really had to put the screws to them and the pressure on them, say, guys, this got to be better. Yep. You have to be able to provide transparency about where product is, whether it's for a new opening, whether it's for a renovation, whether it's for a big group that's coming in on the weekend. You need to have that product. So they're working on it, but it's not great. I would say on the ocean freight side, and you would think this would just, be the price of business, but it's still really difficult. One of the FF&E manufacturers that Integra works with has the ability to track the container from port. They can tell you where it is. It sort of is like a Domino's tracker. They can tell you where it is on the ocean. when it hits the port, and then when you're going to get it. So
Yeah.
I think on the ocean side, that's getting a lot better, whether it's through a barcode or a QR code, you have the ability to do that. But there's still some ways to go.
Yeah, well, hopefully, go ahead.
I'm sorry, David. I say, Jeff, I think part of the hesitancy and with some organizations to do that is it provides accountability, right? So if they said, hey, it's going out tomorrow, and the tracker still shows it's still sitting there on Thursday,
Yeah.
it's a little bit more difficult. Whereas in the way it is now, you can just blame it on something else. Oh, we were delayed, whatever. So I think there's
Yeah.
some of that is a little bit of, knowledge is power. And once you can really track everything, there's, a lot more questions will come up when things aren't going the way they were supposed to.
Yep.
Excellent point.
Just to remind everyone out there, the chat box is open. I'm sure these guys want to answer your questions, so please feel free to put them in there, because we're getting toward the end of our time together. I'd just like to ask, I actually used to work for a data company before during my stints as a journalist, so to speak. We always talked about, the focus has always been on, a lot of the times has been on top line revenue. Not as much, that's what kind of like companies like STR made their money on, right? Just looking at the three, occupancy, average daily rate, and RevPAR. But I really think there's been this kind of push and really looking at flow through, looking at looking at line by line item to kind of control costs. In general, do you think the industry is doing a better job of that? Or like, for instance, as an operator, Jason, obviously you're incentivized on the top line, but your owners, they're the ones they get paid at the off of the bottom line. That's really what they're kind of looking for. Has there been any kind of like shift in the way kind of owners are looking at it? Have they been more kind of maybe they're passive in the past, but have been more assertive and say, hey, we're looking at ways that we can grow GOP?
Yeah, there actually has been quite a shift. I mean, when I first started in hotels, to your point, management companies were paid on top line revenue, and that's the way they were paid. Not to say that that doesn't still exist today, but I would say most of our contracts are now, there is a percentage that's paid off of the top line, but there's also a percentage that's paid off of the GOP. So instead of just having a flat rate at the top line, it's more split between top line revenue, and then there's an incentive that's paid based on hitting the profit numbers. I think through COVID, we all saw how fast we had to adapt and react to controlling costs. And so I think as we pulled through out of that, there is this more focus on efficiency and making sure, doing more with less. There's also there's a balance to that with guest service and sustainability and how that goes. So yeah, I think there has been a shift when you look at just how owners and how companies look at it, where, you've got to, if you're making it at the top, it doesn't do any good to the owner if it's not flowing to the bottom. So there's certainly more of a focus on that.
Debbie, I forget, Loews Hotels, do you own and operate, or do you have third party owners? What's the
We own, and we have very few that we just manage. So we have a couple of owners, yeah, and we have JV partnerships.
you got skin in the game, so
Yeah.
as an owner and operator, you know how that works. Well, look at that, we have questions. All right, I love it. For my good friend Harry Jaber I'm sure you guys all know him at the lodging conference. And obviously his question is about the lodging conference. So when we gather in 6 months from now at the lodging conference in Phoenix, will this tariff sourcing issue be better, worse, or the same? What say you?
I say bad.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead, Jason.
My guess is it's going to be better. I think, 6 months is a long time. Look at how much has happened in the last 3 weeks. I think 6 months from now, again, this is the optimist in me coming out, but I think it's going to be substantially better in 6 months than it is today.
I'm going to hold you to that. What do you think, Jeffrey?
I agree with Jason. I'm optimistic that in 6 months things will be better. Again,
someone from the audience wants you to define what better means.
Better means to me, so again, placing China to the side, because I think that's a whole separate issue. I think, and I guess only the bold make predictions, right? I think that a lot of these tariffs will be eliminated or significantly reduced because there'll be free trade agreements or other bilateral agreements that have been negotiated. So I think that's the main thing. And because I think those things will start to be in the works very soon, I think the actual pricing and cost impact that everyone is going to see is going to be a lot less than everyone thinks it's going to be.
Got it. Debbie, are you in the same camp as these guys?
Yes. Yep, I agree.
I think the other thing that could emerge out of this, and again, this is the optimist talking, is we talked earlier about, where there's opportunity, other companies will find a way to fill that need, right? So imagine more companies come in filling the need, the tariffs become resolved. Guess what that means? It's more competition now, which could actually help with pricing. So there are different scenarios that could go, but I agree. How I would define better is that for the most part, the tariff issue has gone away. I think in a lot of cases, hopefully, the terms of the way we're trading with countries are at least as good, if not better, than what they were before all this started.
Yep.
And I'm with Jeff. I think the one that's a little bit hard to predict is China. I could see that going either way. I could see that extending for a long time. I could also see it getting resolved in, a couple weeks or a month. It just depends on how bad they want to make that happen.
Yeah, I think, well, I won't say what I think, but I think there's one person who knows if they'll be better or worse or the same. And he's in the White House, or maybe he's in Florida right now.
Yeah.
So getting back, we talked about purchasing, but we had a question from the audience, and I agree. This whole there was an article I didn't read it. I saw the headline. It was talking about the U.S. as a brand, though, like, just the U.S. in general, as a brand, and whether, stuff that's going on with tariffs, other stuff is kind of deflating that brand. And are you seeing any retrenchment in travel, especially from overseas? Are you seeing any worry in people's pocketbooks with advanced bookings? Have they dried out a little bit? Are you seeing more cancellations in your business? I mean, what is the overall impact of not just tariffs, but kind of everything it's kind of almost retooling of the American economy, what we're seeing with kind of this stuff with, I mean, I get it anecdotally, I know this isn't a debate on immigration, but there's just things out there that all these things have an impact on travel, and this is your business. So is there any, what can you say to the audience about those types of things happening? Jason, maybe because you operate all hotels, what are you seeing in your business?
So a couple of things we've seen in the last few weeks. One is we have noticed a decline in Canadian travel. So I think definitely that's had an impact on, depending on where our hotel markets are, if there's a larger Canadian travel base, we have seen that slow down.
That's not good, right? Canada's a big source.
That's not good at all. And hopefully it's just, this is all in the last few weeks. So it's not like it's come to a halt, but we have seen it slow down. Hopefully we'll see that turn around. The other thing we have noticed is some of our group bookings pace has slowed as well. And it's not as much, I don't think it's all tariffs. I think it's related to some of the DOGE stuff going on. Some of the meetings that would have happened have been canceled. So we've seen a little bit of that. Now, the good news is, if you look at government business overall, it's not usually a huge portion when you look at total group bookings. Now, specific hotels, it can be, depending on where that hotel is located. Like an example, we have a few hotels here in DC. The impact is going to be larger there than in other markets. But I would say overall, how I'd answer it is we've definitely seen a little bit of a decline in the travelers from Canada. And we have seen group pace for 2025 slow a little bit. Not crazy, slow a little bit.
I live in the DC area, and I was reading, something like stat about 40% of new restaurants or existing restaurants in DC are closing. So that's just kind of a bad omen altogether. But what about Debbie? I mean, you guys operate and own luxury hotels, so you have an affluent customer. Is there any difference there? I mean, what do you? Is there any retrenchment there in terms of people traveling? Are they not maybe spending as much? So on F&B and kind of the other spa and all the other stuff that comes with your types of assets?
Right. I think it's too soon to really measure it for the luxury customer. So I don't think it's as much as what Jason mentioned, but Jason also has international companies. So, but this is US based. So I don't think ours is quite where Jason's is yet.
Got it. And Jeff, you don't run hotels, so I guess you're lucky in that regard.
Yeah, I don't, but to Jason's point about Canadian business, I work with a lot of my Canadian counterparts. I think it's in my opinion, it's a reaction to sort of the rhetoric that came from here up there. But look, in the end, the United States is 41% cheaper than going, the the conversion rate on the currency is so much more favorable for them. So we'll see. It's and hopefully what happens is the market evens out and people, start to realize, again, like we said earlier, take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Don't change too many habits. Be deliberate in what you do and how you do it. So but yeah, I'm strictly on the procurement side, sourcing. So
Yeah.
What about another question for the audience was interesting, and I'll preface by saying I think I'm correct that the prices shouldn't be up yet, right? Like the tariffs, I know they're in effect, but stuff that was already coming over here that hasn't been processed or has been processed, that kind of thing, there hasn't slapped a tariff on it. Are you already seeing though, are vendors already passing along costs to you? Because that could be worrisome, right? That you shouldn't have to be paying those costs yet. Like, do you know when you're actually supposed to be paying more for these things? Or are vendors already saying now you have to pay more for stuff? Any of that?
So that is a tough question. I would say specifically what I delve in every day is room supplies. Usually you have a distributor who has anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks on hand, and they generally have 4 to 6 weeks on the water. So my understanding is that if it was on the water before April 5th, then it's not tariffed, and then afterward it would be. So we are not seeing a lot of upcharges or fees or anything like that has come through. I'm not saying it won't in the coming weeks, but we have not seen any.
Yeah.
We haven't either. Not
I
yet.
guess that's a good thing then, if you're not this cost yet. It might be imminent, but right now at least, someone still in the audience wants to know about they really want the Domino's pizza tracker thing. Expanding on that.
Yeah, I saw that question. So I want to be careful about, so I worked a lot with HD Supply, for example. They had talked about it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I can comment on how close they are or not knowing their internal IT processes take a long time. We all know you could say 6 months and it ends up at 18 months.
Yeah.
But I think the important thing is they're all thinking about it. They all understand that to support, like Jason and Debbie and their operations, that they have to have more transparency. As Jason said, take on that accountability for the products and the service levels that they provide. That's really important. They understand that in the hospitality business, customers are more discerning. They're more demanding on having that level of transparency and accountability, and probably not fast enough for all of us, but they are working on it.
Got it. All right, we're kind of toward the end of the hour. I want to ask, and I think we've exhausted all the Q&A. So I appreciate everyone sending their questions in. I think we got to most of them. So I always end, well, I don't always, but when I do panels or webinars, I like to kind of ask a question of you guys, kind of a parting shot. I used to watch, if you remember Chris Matthews on Hardball. He's not around so much anymore. They sometimes drag him. He always said, "Tell me something I don't know." So tell the audience something we don't know or we should know. Could be anything about your business, but give us something maybe that we haven't talked about yet, or that should be top of mind for people. Tell the audience something we don't know. And I'm going to start with Debbie.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, that's the,
You can pass to one of these guys if they want to take it.
yeah, let's ask one of Jason
who wants to answer that? Jeff, you have an answer. You always got an answer.
Yeah.
So I would say one thing you don't know about business. So I would say related to Integra is that Integra is using AI, whether it's shopping assistant, which gives you the ability to say, hey, I was buying this, I can buy this now.
Yeah.
That opportunity, that AI technology is really now embedded in the business. And I think that's something that's really important in helping customers really improve their business and sort of go that extra mile to be more efficient and streamline what they do.
Very good. Jason, tell us something.
So what I would say, especially from some of the other comments, is that there's a lot of stuff out there right now about and worry and concern, everything we spent the hour talking about. But the reality is our numbers are actually really good. We had a record first quarter. So I think one of the things out there is perception versus reality. And I'm not undermining or trying to put down any of the stuff we've discussed, but that's much more kind of what it could have happened, not what's actually happening. So I think what I would just say is with the hard numbers that have actually come through so far this year, have actually been very positive. Now we'll see what second quarter does, obviously with everything going on, but I would just say a little bit of that Chicken Little effect may be happening right now because the numbers that have actually come in have actually been very good.
Got it. All right, Debbie, you're up.
I think I'm just going to piggyback on what Jason said. I think, you know, we need to be optimistic and we don't know a lot. So everything is a moving target. So I think being optimistic and just focus on what you can resolve now. And hopefully in the next few months, things will get better and we'll be okay. We always prevail. So
There you go. Focus on what you can because we
Yeah.
don't know a lot.
Yep.
That's a good takeaway. All right. Well, I want to thank, obviously I want to thank Debbie Young from Lowe's, Jeffrey Simmons from Sodexo, and Jason Reeder from Remington Hospitality for this enlightening conversation. I enjoyed it really. And I want to thank everyone for hanging in there and listening to it. I hope you got a lot of insights and education out of it. And I want to thank again our sponsor, Integra, who we couldn't do this webinar without. So with that, I appreciate it. I hope to see everyone in the audience at some point. I hope they come up to me at a conference and say hello, but I want to thank our panelists. Have a great rest of the day, rest of the week, and we'll see you next time. Thank you all.
Thank you.
David.
thank you.
Bye.